Good evening, treasure seekers. This is Blake coming to you live from New Mexico, and joining me as always from Washington State, it's Bryn and Cody. How's it going, guys?
Hello, hello. Been a good weekend.
Yeah,
Did we
Went to a
decide we were going
wedding.
to stop saying the coming to you live thing, or are we
I don't
continuing
know.
with that?
It's a habit. I've been doing it
I think we
for
just
11 years now, so I can't stop.
it's part of the brand. We just roll with it now.
Yeah, I mean, my old podcast had like 20 listeners. This one has almost 2,000 now. So good job, everybody, subscribing to the podcast. This is beyond our wildest expectations. So thanks, everybody, for listening.
You're
I
on pace
remember-
for your next podcast to be 200,000 listeners.
We're just trying to get one of the YouTube buttons, the little plaque that they send you.
Oh, yeah. Have you
Maybe-
researched
maybe-
how many you need to get that?
Oh, I don't. I
A
think
lot.
I would imagine minimum is 100,000. Maybe it's 500,000. I don't know.
100,
Not
100,
2,000.
100,000 is correct. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
The vanity,
Well, you never know.
the vanity made me look it up at one time because I was also curious about that. But we'll be
would look
skeletons by the time we get 100,000.
It would look nice on your wall by your gem poster.
Absolutely. Cool. Any exciting news from the weekend? You said it was a good weekend.
It was a good weekend. I'm kind of getting more into my Pokemon card collecting just for fun. And um I had like everybody else, probably similar age, had a collection of Pokemon cards as a child that I, of course, got rid of at one point in time, which is now devastating to think back on as I look at prices of cards. However, I did have the foresight to save all my holographic cards from the original set.
Oh,
So I've gone through and I've started looking up some of the potential values of those and have been putting them in these nice little cases to
Oh.
protect them after how many years? Because Cody and I were thinking it'd be fun to send some in to get graded. So
yeah.
I need to do some more research on what different levels look like. Like, what does an 8 look like versus a 9? I'm sure I don't have any 10s. But I want to make sure I'm not sending in like a 2 and they're just like, what is this person doing? So
Yeah.
we kind of getting into the cards.
We were at the card show the other day. I don't know, a few weeks back when I was visiting, and I think you guys each bought a card. But yeah, it made me a little sick that I had a pack. I don't know, in my old under my bed artifacts from childhood. Right, we had
Unopened.
an unopened pack of Pokemon fossil cards, which is like,
Ooh.
and yeah, at the card show, I think those were like $250. And I had
More than
opened it
that.
a couple of years ago. Yeah. So whoopsie.
Oh, what did you do with it?
I gave it to a child of one of my friends to see if they
Oh
wanted
my.
the cards.
Oh
bad.
my.
I opened it before I gave it to him
Okay. Okay.
and made sure there wasn't like a super valuable card. I don't think there was. So
That's good at least.
yes, the value of the pack I don't think exceeded. It would have been more valuable as a sealed pack of Pokemon cards, but alas.
At least you don't have to stress about, giving something away that is worth a lot of money. So
Right.
you can sleep at night.
I can very soundly. Speaking of Pokemon cards, I was in Vegas actually at the Plaza Hotel, which is where Seeking Treasure Con 2026 is going to be. And Plaza Hotel has a Lucky Box vending machine. And sure enough, there's like jerseys, signed jerseys in there you could buy.
Really?
There's like sports cards, and then of course there's Pokemon cards, graded Pokemon cards. So behind me, I did purchase a single Lucky Box Pokemon card for how much do you think?
I'm guessing you paid, I don't know, 200?
No, $75.
Okay. Okay.
And at risk of being blurry the rest of the episode, I it's you can see that it's still sealed. So,
So I wanna understand how the lucky box works. So you say I want to buy what type of item. So you say I want to buy a Pokemon card, and then it gives you a dollar value to choose from.
No, it's just all one. It's always $75.
I wonder whose autographed sports jersey you can buy for $75.
I don't know. Those are maybe more expensive. I don't know. I didn't look.
Oh, so this okay.
Yeah,
I'm following.
So those
just for the Pokemon card.
Just for a graded Pokemon card, it's $75, and you might get a bad one, you might get a good one. So we're gonna open this live and see what it is. So hopefully you guys have your Pokemon price calculators loaded up, so we know.
I'm so excited.
Ooh.
Oh,
What is it?
It's a trainer. It's a 10.
You got a 10.
YOLO?
Okay.
Were they all 10s?
Oh, Volo. I don't think they're all 10s necessarily.
Really?
All right, so I have a Volo from Pokemon 2023. Crown Zenith. It's an ultra rare holographic Volo. Gem Mint. Tell me how much that's worth.
To look it up, I think you need
here.
like the numbers at the bottom. Does it say like a number out of a number?
Yeah, it's a 151 out of 159. So hopefully it's worth $1 million. Then I can retire. I work on the Pokemon box with Bryn.
So I can't tell if this is a holo or not. The picture doesn't really look like it. But this is saying PSA 10 would be $21, but I don't think that's a holographic one.
Interesting.
Here's one. That looks holographic. Maybe $50 on eBay.
Okay. That's the asking price, not necessarily the sold price.
Asking price. Here's another one asking for $82.
So once we do a bit more research.
Anyway, I mean, it's probably nothing crazy, but I think it's exciting that you got a 10.
Yes. Excellent. So
that's fun. I like that. I want to do that when we're there.
Okay. Yeah. Bring your $75.
I'm not a huge fan of grab bag, mystery bag type items.
I see. You like to know exactly what you're getting.
I just feel like the person who's putting the grab bag or mystery bag together, like there's nothing stopping them from just like putting in all things that are worth less than $75.
Well, yeah, they're going to make a profit somehow. Yes. But I think they
for the fun of it.
Promise there are some high value cards in there. So
you think so?
Yes. Anyway, the vending machine is in a casino, so
I mean, yeah, they gotta have some like positive testimonials, right? To be like, oh, I found a whatever. Yes. I'm happy you bought one, Blake. That was exciting.
Yes. So depending on the value, once we do a little bit more research, this may end up as a prize for Seeking Treasure Con. So you may or may not be excited to see that.
I was excited. I think that's a win all around. Good purchase, Blake.
Thank you. All right. Shall we get into news? So the news this week, in my opinion, is a new Jon Collins-Black interview that was given by Jon Collins-Black to Froggy, or aka Estes Quest. I know we've talked about Froggy's solves in the past. He's a creative thinker. He kind of focuses on a lot of different boxes in There's Treasure Inside Treasure Hunt, and I think he also has been doing a lot on Beyond the Map's Edge as well. So anyway, Froggy was able to get an interview with JCB and posted it this week. And as always, there's some interesting nuggets. Did you guys happen to see the interview yet?
I have not.
Cody? Oh, good.
So no, not yet.
These are all brand new nuggets then for you guys.
Oh boy.
I kind of
bring us up to speed.
I kind of like the way Froggy did the interview. He kind of did a box by box question. And then he did a rapid fire Discord questions at the end to JCB. So some super interesting ones. So he started with the Appalachian Trail, and obviously we'll post a link to the full interview which I recommend checking out in the show notes here. But started with the Appalachian Footpath Box. Jon Collins-Black revealed that was when he was first conceptualizing the treasure hunt, that would have been his first choice of where to put a single treasure, was somewhere along the Appalachian Trail. And he gives a reminder to the listeners that the Appalachian Trail is more than just North Carolina. So some speculation already online. Does that mean it's not North Carolina? Obviously, he didn't say that, but Jon Collins-Black definitely encouraged people to think outside of the North Carolina box for the Appalachian Trail treasure. He talks a couple times about the Blue Ridge Mountains, and specifically states that the Blue Ridge Mountains are amazing. And he also recounts the story of his babysitter his babysitter was a biology teacher, spending time with that teacher out in nature in the Blue Mountain area, quote unquote, collecting leaves and learning about the names of trees. So whether or not that comes into play or not, I thought those were two fun facts to think about, because he mentioned those explicitly as being some of his memories when exploring nature with that biology teacher / babysitter. Regarding the Pokemon box, Froggy did not have a very specific question about the Pokemon box. He just wanted to talk to JCB about Japan a bit. However, there was a quote as part of JCB's discussion. He says, "The Pokemon box and the way the box looks is steeped in the traditions of Japan and a testament on how much he likes Japan." So that's a little nugget for you, Bryn.
Steeped.
Yeah.
Not your brand of tea. Okay.
For the Forest Fen box, he again clarified in this interview that it is not in Yellowstone. And clarifies a little bit more that Jon Collins-Black never looked for the treasure in Yellowstone. And he did not think that Forrest Fenn would have hidden the box in Yellowstone, even though he talked about Yellowstone in the book a lot. And Jon Collins-Black says he is at fault because instead of focusing on the most obvious thing, which is that his book talks about Yellowstone more than anything else, he went a different direction. He said he would not have found the box in 100 years because he didn't think Forrest would hide it in Yellowstone. And he hid the box in an exact spot that he thought the Forrest Fenn treasure was actually hidden. So I'm going to play a sound clip from the interview, and you guys can make your own assessment.
I hid the Forrest Fenn box in my treasure in an exact place that I was searching, that I came across, and I was like, if he didn't hide it here, this is like where he should have hid it. So it was always in my mind. And so when I decided to do a Forrest Fenn box, I knew exactly where I was going to put it.
So this is actually very interesting to me because in this sense, you can use the Forrest Fenn hunt now as direct clues to JCB's hunt, because he is saying he hid it in a spot where he thought the Forrest Fenn clues aligned to.
Yeah, so you really have to make, I mean, as you go line by line, obviously it's not exactly line by line, but like you have to make your solve fit both.
Mm-hmm.
You know, make Brown work for his poem, make Brown work for Forrest Fenn original poem.
Yep.
I think what is also super interesting is if it's that distinct of like, this must be the spot, like what does that mean? I think to me that means it must have some sort of very distinct attribute to it, whether that be something like very unique in the landscape, whether that's like the most amazing view, or something like that. Like, what else would set it apart from the rest? So it's not just going to be, I would think, hidden off somewhere that kind of looks like everywhere else.
So in my mind, you're almost doubling the information you can use now, right? But on the other hand, I think it potentially gives advantage to searchers that did the Forrest Fenn hunt, right?
Totally. Yeah, because he was part of all that chatter, online chatter at that time. I mean, obviously he said he was doing his own thing, but he was influenced, I'm sure, by these chat rooms, discussion rooms that he was also in.
Right.
The first thing that comes to mind for me for kind of a new approach, given that information, is I would think to obviously where it's hidden, as you guys were saying, it's going to fit the Forrest Fenn poem, and it's also going to fit the JCB poem. I think my first approach is going to be to kind of look at the similar lines, like, you know, your where warm waters halt for Forrest Fenn, and your begin at where cool water flows for JCB. And I think I'm going to start filtering things through the lens of it needs to fit the Forrest Fenn one, but then fit the JCB one better. Because I think that's essentially what he's doing, right? Is he's taking the Forrest Fenn poem, his solve for it, and then when he's rewriting it, he's making it even more specific to his location than Forrest Fenn would have been. So you can kind of almost say it needs to meet both the criteria and it needs to meet the JCB poem criteria even better than the Forrest Fenn criteria.
Right.
So another one that would be like really interesting to look at is like the home of Brown versus the, oh, I forget the exact term, but like near the home of Brown versus at the home of Brown,
where
or whatever.
Brown once was. Yeah.
Yeah. So it needs to meet needs to fit for both of those, but almost fit the JCB phrasing better than the Forrest Fenn phrasing.
Right. And I think this concept was probably on everybody's mind, but I'm gonna play the clip again because I think there's a key piece of this.
I hid the Forrest Fenn box in my treasure in an exact place that I was searching, that I came across, and I was like, if he didn't hide it here, this is like where he should have hid it.
So it wasn't like he found this particular place for his Forrest Fenn box like in transit or in a spot that didn't necessarily fit all the criteria for the Forrest Fenn box. He said the exact spot, and if this wasn't the spot, like that, I think is actually key wording that JCB provides there that bolsters this approach a lot more than maybe people were thinking.
Yeah, that's way more confirmation because before, like you just said, it could have been anywhere that he stumbled upon, and this is the exact solve location.
Yeah,
that's a really good clarification.
I wish he would have provided that in our interview, right? So I phrased the question when we interviewed him, like if the Forrest Fenn box was the easiest one for him to hide, and he agreed that it was, but he didn't give any more detail like he did here, right? That he thinks this is a really good match to the Forrest Fenn poem.
I wouldn't blame yourself, though, because I think it really seems to me like he's starting to loosen up a little bit more as the months go by, I'd say, in his responses to questions.
I agree with that.
Totally, because I mean, he was going to not give out clues for 8 years, and I would definitely argue that these are clues.
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely starting to, if nothing else, it's starting to get a little bit gray area.
I agree. Yeah, that you have to watch all the JCB media. It's not just the book that's giving you hints now. So you're right. It is a gray area. Any more thoughts on that, or I'll move on?
It makes me more intrigued in the Forrest Fenn box.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll be very interested to see if the person who finds the JCB Forrest Fenn box was an original Forrest Fenn hunter, because I feel like it's obvious the ways that being an original Forrest Fenn hunter could help you, but I think there's also an element of like the ultimate confirmation bias, right?
Yeah,
where like if we're really into one specific area for Forrest Fenn, that it could kind of it could be difficult for you to pull yourself away from that on try number 2 with a new Forest Fen poem.
Yeah, I just think about like hard clues, right? Where warm waters halt, right? Forest Fen hunters, if they really put their nose down, could identify so many options for that, and now they already have a starting list, right, of places. Yeah. So anyway, more to come on that probably, but I thought it was super helpful, super interesting. Mm-hmm. Froggy then asks about the past and future box, specifically about what JCB's history was with his grandparents, to try to tease apart that last section of the past and future box. And there's a critical thing. So let me read a passage from the book first. This is the very last paragraph. This daily newspaper puzzler was one of my grandfather's favorite pastimes. I was sometimes bored at Grandpa's house, so I'd often peer over his shoulder while he worked on solving one of those games. Perhaps the only thing my grandfather enjoyed more than this riddler was counting the vehicles that passed in front of his yard. And so that vehicles word has thrown us for a loop many times, right? Because why did he use vehicles? So let us play a clip from the Froggy interview.
But I loved my grandparents. My grandparents, especially my grandfather, was old school. He was born, I think, in 1916. He was like, but it felt like he was from like 5 or 6 generations ago. Very agricultural. They had a huge, they farmed off the land, even not to sell, just for themselves. He kept bees. He had a woodworking shop. He was the kind of guy who didn't talk a whole lot. I think I tell a story where they kind of sit in the front yard and just count the cars. That's what their entertainment was.
So he reveals, and at least in this wording, that they were counting cars driving by.
It's just so funny to know how much weight people put on this for so many months, and he just so nonchalantly just changes the terminology.
So I think what's maybe most alarming about that is like kind of going back to the a previous interview where he's saying people are getting lost in the details and overlooking some of the obvious stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think just hearing that, it's like, I need to, and I'm working so hard to like pull myself out of this deep hole I'm in with Pokemon box.
Right.
And like, let's just take the obvious stuff. So like if he says vehicles, maybe that's just cars. So like, right. I need to get better into that mindset.
And he's never claimed that his solutions are clever, right? We asked him that directly. And he's like, I don't know if they're clever. In the previous clip, right, he talks about Yellowstone and how he was going. It wasn't in the clip, but watch the full interview. Highly recommend that. He wasn't taking the most obvious piece of information. That Thrill of Chase had a lot of passages, and the majority of the passages are focused on Yellowstone and stories in Yellowstone. So I think you're right to maybe zoom out a bit and see what are the most obvious things.
Kind of sit in the front yard and just count the cars. Kind of sit in the front yard and just count the cars. Kind of sit in the front yard and just count the cars.
I mean, there's a few other things from that I also found interesting. The bees, you got your bee on a pistol.
The beekeeper.
Also, like the farming aspect, that raises a few spidey senses. That's something that he probably would have grown up with exposure to. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. All right.
We talk so much about confirmation bias, and I feel like there's another similar thing that I'm starting to notice happen. It's like, very similar to the confirmation bias thing. And it's that like, when you really want to find the treasure, it's like the more you want to find it, you think, I just need to work harder to find it. And then work harder ends up kind of just naturally translating to like find more nitpicky things.
Yes.
And it's I don't know. I find a lot of like overlap between that idea and the idea of confirmation bias, where you like get in your own head and you're like, I need to try harder, need to dig deeper, and almost get too go too deep instead of wider.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of in disagreement here. Like, we're supposed to use the 26 chapters of part 1, right, to tell us how to become good treasure hunters. Obviously, we have one that's called...
Careful with your chapter count.
Yeah, 23,
20,
right?
23.
And also not all of them.
Not all of them, but...
You're going to get angry comments.
If we look at the themes, right, joy is in the details, right? That's chapter 3, where it's all about looking for details in the book and looking for details in life. But then we also have don't give up, like the persistence part. But a lot of the chapter themes are not necessarily like work harder, right? They're like be persistent, but not necessarily what you're saying, Cody. I think I agree with is maybe try harder to put the obvious pieces together instead of nitpicking, like you said. I like that a lot. Nitpicking more details. I mean, we don't know. It's going to be helpful when somebody finds the first box, right? Yeah. It's going to be key.
Exactly.
But
I feel like you guys are specifically having an intervention with me about Pokemon box.
No, not at all. It's the same thing for Pass and Few. I mean, you're going to see it in Discord Detectives today, right? You're going to see it in Mailbag probably, but yeah. We get excited about these small connections that could be coincidences, and just having the ability to zoom out, like you said, I think is wise. Yeah. Just keep that in mind. We all have to do that. All right.
Yeah, I think another way of phrasing it would be like, I feel like if someone posted on the Discord just all the obvious stuff, I'd be like, oh, they're not even trying.
But it has to take 8 years somehow, right? I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. Treasure hunting is hard, I think.
Yeah.
All right. He talks then about a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons, which I didn't find to be too interesting. And then he gets into rapid fire questions. First question. Are you currently working on an updated errata of factually incorrect sections and misspellings? Jon Collins-Black says he thinks he's fixed all of them, but the books that have them maybe have not hit shelves yet. So we're still in kind of like version trouble in terms of getting a pristine copy of the book, even at this point.
So we just have to keep buying new editions.
Yep.
All right.
How does do either of you happen to know how like ebooks would work? Is it something where like if amendments were made to the book, it would automatically update, or if it release a new version? It'd be interesting to look into that a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I feel like the copy that I have purchased as an ebook many months ago is probably the same version, but I don't know. That's a great question. Googleable, I think. So let's do that. Second question. I'm just gonna play the clip because it involves us a bit.
This one, it's always funny when people say we know. So there's a little asterisk next to that. But here's the question. We know from the artist that you added the butterfly to your other book, The Unbreakable Thread. Why did you do it, and what does it represent to you?
Well, I may have to punt on that question.
Fair.
I will say, like, the saying that I added a butterfly, I personally did not like have any access to those files. But anyway, I'm going to punt on that question.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to hear that last part again?
I will say, like, the saying that I added a butterfly, I personally did not like have any access to those files.
So who was editing the photo? I mean, we have clear.
I feel like. I mean, one, he said he's going to punt on the question twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why he put this little cop out in there? That's like, I didn't have access to the files. I can believe that, right? And he had another artist put the butterfly in, right?
Or, I mean, I think you can also have, because it sounded like when we had the email from the artist, the colors were off. The color correction was not consistent throughout the book. So he could have had something as simple as an image of that page, not an original file, and he could have created an additional layer, put the butterfly. I mean, there's so many ways. It's obviously added.
I think there's a lot of ways that he can be technically telling the truth and still have added a butterfly. And the fact that he said he's going to punt twice is pretty confirming.
Yeah.
that we're on to something, and B, that it's something relatively important, right? I would think.
I would think so.
So I'm very excited by that answer.
Good work, team. Got him on his toes.
Yeah.
His heels is the phrase.
All right.
Carry on.
And then there was a question. I'm just going to play it. It's a nugget for Cody.
Why did you use numbers in the front of the book and Roman numerals in the back?
I wish there was a really nice, like interesting answer, but that was a complete design choice by the gentleman who designed the book.
So no, according to JCB, no connection to having Roman numerals in the back of the book for the part 2 sections.
I'm happy to hear that.
So we can X that off our list.
Perfect. One less thing in my mind.
Free up some brain space. Yep. He then asks, do you like the game Frogger? And Jon Collins-Black says, actually, yes. That's it. So my assumption there is that, so again, these were Discord questions that Froggy was posing in this rapid fire round. So somebody has a Frogger solve, I'm assuming, probably with past and future box. I'm guessing that they wanted that answered.
Is Froggy a new content creator from the Shoshin side?
No, I think he's a bit more of a veteran.
Okay.
Because he's been
doing
doing
he had the
his
name
own
Froggy before.
Yes, and so he's
okay.
And for if you listen to the full interview, which again I recommend, JCB clarifies and said that's not like a question from you associated with your name, and he said no. So it was a community member asking that question.
Interesting. All right.
And then I don't know if you guys have been following this. He asked a question about 2 websites that people had found online that supposedly used to be owned by JCB. This was information that Patch from Discord had sent to me. I know the Calzars covered it probably a couple months ago. I kind of ignored it because I didn't think it would be a clue. I don't think JCB is going to do anything digital in my opinion. So I kind of ignored it. And so anyway, Froggy asked about those 2 websites, which is like geteraisednow.com and perfectlovesong.com, something like that, that somebody had co-opted, and you can put your email in there and stuff, which I don't recommend doing. And JCB confirmed that he had no ownership or part of those at this point, that he had done a lot of web stuff, 15, 20 years ago, but yeah, he didn't have any ownership of those things at this point. So that's it. That is the interview. I recommend you looking it up and watching it for yourself.
Man, these are all good interviews. I think when we first did our interview, we were one of the first, I think. And I remember we were very conservative in our questions because we wanted to get an interview.
Yes.
And we, didn't want to ask anything that would be prying, with the fear of we would not get an interview.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's there's no limit, there's no boundaries.
Interrogations.
Now I want another interview where I can just
So yeah, to clarify Bryn's statement, I know Calzars did interview JCB right before the book came out, I believe. So they were hunters, right? Searchers that had an interview. And then it seemed like a lot more mainstream media, and then kind of not treasure specific interviews. And then we had our interview. So you're correct that we were being fairly cautious in order to try to secure the interview to begin with. But yeah, it's kind of open season now.
Yeah.
All right. Should we get into Horseshoes and Hand Grenades? 1 second. Cody, you're hosting Horseshoes and Hand Grenades today.
Yes, let me share my screen. I'm big on PowerPoints recently.
Yeah.
Just feels so much easier. I was worried this was going to be too short and sweet, but we had a really long news segment, so I think it's going to fit in perfectly schedule-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So I was getting kind of, I guess, frustrated over the last few weeks because I felt like I had so many strong connections to places that weren't in the continental United States. And it was like, I just feel like I've been saying for a while now that I feel like everything's pointing towards St. Louis or Paris. Obviously St. Louis is in the continental United States, but the Paris one was like, everything is just leading to Paris. Spoiler alert, after I do all this, it may just be because Paris is like a very cultural hub and has been around for a long time. But still, I was kind of thinking about ways to potentially like make strong connections between places outside of the continental United States, and connect them in a way to a place in the continental United States. So that's kind of what I'm going to explore here in this PowerPoint. And I'll talk through some of my thought processes and some of the things that I found along the way. So connecting geographical locations. Let's see here. There we go. So I think the main one I was most interested in and spent the most time researching was the idea of sister cities. So there's basically two different things. There's kind of like some informal sister cities and twin towns and things like that. And then there's like formal recognized sister cities, which is the first bullet point here, which is the Sister Cities International, which is the primary organization that formally supports and recognizes international sister city relationships. So some kind of interesting things I found in my research, mostly just reading the bullet points here. Toledo, Ohio, twinned with Toledo, Spain in 1931, and was the first city in North America to engage in town twinning. That one jumped out at me a little bit because I know there's a lot of Ohio themes or a lot of Ohio solves in the book. I liked the idea that many of the sister cities were based on kind of thematic connections. Like if two different cities were like big into technology, they'd become sister cities, or big into a number of different things that seemed kind of more thematic than random. So there's a way of kind of connecting maybe some of the themes of the book to themes that would also connect to cities. Another one that really jumped out at me because of my big sewing, weaving connection that I love so much. The modern concept of town twinning appeared during the Second World War between Coventry and Stalingrad. And there's this story I was reading about where 830 women had their names embroidered on a tablecloth, along with the words, "Little help is better than a lot of pity." And then that's how they kind of made that connection between those. It was like the start of the connection between those two towns. So anything that has any sort of weaving or sewing or embroidery always jumps out at me. And then going into this in general, my big hope, I guess, was to make some connection between Paris and then somewhere in the continental United States, just because I felt like this massive overflow of pointers all pointing towards Paris. But it looks like the only real like recognized sister city relationship with Paris is Rome, Italy. And then there's a couple other ones, like I was talking about earlier, the kind of more informal, like Washington, D.C., Chicago, and San Francisco. But I didn't like that those were kind of more like, I don't know, less formal. It just didn't seem quite right to me. So That was some of my looking into sister cities. Another thing I looked into to kind of make similar connections
Mm,
was geographic antipodes, which is
interesting.
basically where in the continental United States would you be if you drew like a straight line through the center of the earth.
Mhm.
And when I first looked into that map, I was all excited with the idea. And then I pulled up the map and I was like, oh, it's basically all ocean. There's like no actual land. And at first that was really, um, I guess, like deflating for me. I was like, oh, I guess I can just toss that idea out. But I think that it actually was a good thing because it made it really easy to um, check the few spots that were geographic antipodes that weren't ocean. Uh, Anytime I get the opportunity to kind of limit the information, I think is a good thing because that's kind of my main problem right now. It's just too much information and too many places to look. So you can see that the geographic antipodes that are not ocean for the continental United States are basically these two little islands that Le Amsterdam and Le St. Paul in the center of the continental United States, and then this Kerguelen at the northern part of kind of the center of the continental United States. So I figured, oh, this is some random, the Le Amsterdam one, oh, this is some random island in the center of an ocean. There's going to be like no information on it. It's going to be uninhabited. There's no way that, there's anything, there's no way that there's enough about this island that you could tie stuff from the book to it to make it have any sort of relevance. Turns out there's quite a bit actually going on. Um, First off, I like that it was French because, again, I was looking for anything to connect me to Paris, any sort of connections between Paris and the continental United States. There's a research station out there that researches biology, meteorology, and geomagnetics. The meteorology I was specifically interested in because it feels like that's kind of on theme with some of the stuff from the book. And then the geomagnetics felt like it kind of could be too. And then there's a story of, I guess I'll read here, the French mariner Pierre, who was marooned on the island, wrote about it in this document he just called Memoirs, which apparently is was published and is now this limited edition expensive collector's item. So I've not looked into that any further, but basically all of that is to say that this island that I was worried wouldn't have like enough information about it to make connections to it actually is kind of got a pretty rich history and multiple different opportunities to reference it or make clues about it. And it's specifically the antipode of that island is near Lamar, Colorado, which is, I guess, good-ish. Definitely not great. There's definitely not like a lot of area to hide treasure around there. It's pretty remote and kind of desolate. So, yeah, I mean, this is all horseshoes and hand grenades, so I didn't find anything kind of boots on the ground worthy.
Mhm.
The other one I looked at was the Les Kerguelen, which is an antipode of an area near Rudyard, Montana, which is, I think, a little bit better as far as like places to look on the continental United States side of things. But one thing I really liked about the Colorado one is how central it was, and it kind of feels weird. I guess it wouldn't feel weird if this ended up being like a I guess it probably wouldn't be like a forest vent glue, but I guess it felt weird that it wasn't as central. Like it's very, very almost off the map of the continental United States. So I didn't love that. This one's also French, also has research labs and living quarters. Um, I guess the one thing that felt most noteworthy about this island is that it used to have this arch that was like pretty famous and on a bunch of postage stamps. One day I'll do a horseshoes and hand grenades about my postage stamp ideas. That's one of the reasons that this really interested me was because of the postage stamps connection. But there's this arch, and then I think like 10 or 15 years ago, it collapsed and now it's two pillars. Kind of just an interesting geological feature on that one.
Mm-hmm.
A couple other things I looked into, trying to make those same connections between the continental United States and elsewhere globally, is the idea of latitude and longitude twins, which is basically just if there's an area or a city that's at a certain latitude and then another one that you can kind of draw a latitudinal line to somewhere continental. Like for Paris, in this case, you could get pretty close to Seattle by right around that 48 degrees line. That one seems probably not quite specific enough. The other one I looked into was time zone twins, which is basically just time zones that are exactly 12 hours apart. And that's another way of kind of reflecting one side of the globe to the other side of the globe. So my conclusions were, as much as I wanted to be able to like take this real big bulk of what I felt like were like clues or possible solves or solutions that were not in the continental United States and move them somehow into the continental United States, there wasn't a lot that I found that seemed like really strong evidence or a really clear way of doing that. My other conclusion, it's probably most important in hindsight, is I really don't like that if this were to be like a correct way of doing things, it just opens up even more possibilities. And I feel like that's really my problem right now is I've got too many possibilities and I need to just be able to be like, all right, it's not in the continental United States. I can at least rule that out. And if I start to buy into this too much and think, oh, I can just, allow solves to be outside of the continental United States and I'll figure out ways to move them in, it just like gets something that already feels overwhelming, makes it even more overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my attempt at reflecting some things across the globe. And there's a big part of me that's very glad that it didn't really work out because, like I said, it would just be even more overwhelming.
I'm glad you can check that one off your list.
Yeah, I guess I was a little curious about what's the name of the term? Interpol or interlobes?
Antipodes,
how you came up with that. But then thinking about it, if we're thinking about the mirror theme, right? Couple instances of that would, maybe thematically make sense.
Yeah, I did look into kind of keywords for any sort of like reflecting or mirroring or twinning. And that's the problem again with it being a whole book is if you're looking for a word or any synonyms of a word in an entire book, you can normally find a handful of those words in there. And I did.
Confirmers, yeah.
But I was also definitely looking at it more from a standpoint of like, why does everything lead to France, and how can I like make a strong connection between, or specifically Paris, and how can I make a strong connection between Paris and anywhere in the continental United States? So I was looking at it more through that lens of like, let's move some of this stuff to the continental United States, and less through the lens of like, what evidence do I have that this is what I'm supposed to be doing in the first place?
Right. Yeah, the one I actually find more interesting is the latitudinal shift, because there are at least one mention in the book when he's talking about Japan. He said, almost 6,000 miles directly east. Seth Gold is in North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
So that would be a hint towards using that strategy, but I think I agree that maybe it's a rabbit hole not to go down at this point. Right. Should we dive into Mailbag?
Mailbag. We've got mail.
First mailbag today is from an anonymous sender. This is following up on Cody's Discord detective, I believe from last week, regarding the state of Franklin, which was part of the past and future box.
Nice.
So I think the email here presents just kind of a good topic of discussion. So I'm going to read it and then we can go from there. I found the discussion on your last podcast interesting regarding the state of Franklin. JCB has stated that clues for the lion's share box may be anywhere in the book, which creates a problem in the chapters for the 4 smaller treasures. Those clues for the large box that are in the smaller box chapters could be considered red herrings in those chapters because they are leading to a different treasure. I've noticed the numbers 3 and 7 in the Pokemon chapter, 3 raccoons, 7 feet up a oak tree, and also the hands on the Froakie image seem to allude to those same numbers. Also on the map for the Appalachian Footpath box, there's the famous 1727 numbers, which if that was a specific sequence, then the next numbers would be 37. It is possible that those numbers are pointing to the 37th parallel, which I believe could also run through the state of Franklin. This may be nothing, but seems like a neat coincidence at the least. So, all that aside, I mean, like you said, it could be a neat coincidence. But what I like here is the thought and discussion around what seems to be fair game that Jon Collins-Black has put lion's share clues throughout the book, which I have interpreted as they also could show up in the part 2 boxes. So what do you guys think?
You want to go first, Blake?
Yeah, mine's short and sweet. I don't like it.
So you don't think there's gonna be lion's share clues hidden in the part 2 boxes?
I don't think
Here's
so.
what I'll say. I'm going to agree with Blake with a caveat that I think Blake will also agree with my caveat here. And that is, I don't think that he's going to go out of his way to just to put a lion's share clue in there for the sake of hey, let's put it there. I think if there was a lion's share clue that maybe relied on page numbers and he had to get to the page numbers of part 2, I could see how that could be fine in my mind. But I don't think it's gonna be oh, hey, I want to put this sentence in. I'm just gonna throw it in part 2 just because I feel like it. I think it would be kind of more out of necessity than out of convenience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I kind of see it as maybe more thematic. And I think what was maybe so interesting for me thinking through the Pokemon box is I self-admittedly have gone very deep and into the details of the Pokemon box. And so often I find stuff where I'm like, well, this just so aligns perfectly with the lion's share. And so it's for me, I feel like there is a little bit of a hole there where I'm like, is this something that I'm not necessarily supposed to be even considering? Maybe it's fair game for the chapter, but also is it intended to be more thematic with lion's share, part 1? So I just thought it was interesting because I have had that conflict. And I think maybe I've said this before too, maybe the gamification aspects of all the part 2 boxes kind of then those methods kind of also tie into some of the lion's share. I don't know. I just think it's an interesting discussion. We talk about it the other way.
Yeah.
But not so much this direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think JCB has made it pretty clear at this point through interviews and depending on how you read the introduction and how to read this book sections that there shouldn't be clues in for part 2 boxes in the lion's share section or rest of the book. The other direction I think is interesting. I think when he says throughout the whole book, I think he's mainly saying that, in my opinion, because of the other treasures in this, the other treasures section. Mm-hmm. Joy's Serenade obviously is not part of part 1. It's at the end of the book. I would not be offended if there was lion's share's clues in the introduction to part 2. I'd be a little more offended if there's information for lion's share treasure in the actual part 2 chapters, though. That's kind of where I'm drawing lines right now.
And I hope you are correct, because that's what seems fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I unfortunately in the past and future box, like I see a lot of claims for this part of the word search is actually for lion's share. It's a lion's share hint, and it's just like
see, I don't think it's that. It would be that black and white. No.
Bringing in the word search to anything other than the word search is dangerous. Once you start boggling for lion's share.
Well, it was even in Dr. Krypton's book. I don't know if the other ones came out. I haven't looked, but the part 1 book, he flippantly says, "Oh, this actually maybe I will find the location of the lion's share." Actually, it's just like that annoys me to no end.
When you purchase the lion's share ebook, it doesn't come with any of the part 2 chapters. Right. So I think that also is a pretty blatant clue to the answer there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought of it that black and white. That's a good point. I'm going to put that to rest.
Okay.
All right. I have one other. This is from Chet. This is a few thoughts about the X/cross connections. So this was a few more episodes back where we talked about the general theme and idea of how maybe a point of intersection X marks the spot is 2 intersecting lines, kind of like maybe what a fresh Jon Collins-Black approach could be to how that is translated to the location of the lion's share. So he said, first off, 2 intersecting lines define a point in geometry. So at base, a locating X is just a point. It's possible that a word search of point in TTI might yield some interesting results. So then I'm going to rattle off a few things here that he happened to find interesting regarding X crosses points of intersection. Page 94, look both ways before crossing. Page 167, crossing new divides. 198, our hunts intersect. Said, seems to indicate an intersection at a different, more methodological, I can't say the word.
Oh, no, I can't say it. You try, Cody.
Methodological.
You're very good.
Wow, that was really hard. Level than our final X location point. If a roadmap, perhaps the path curls, Joy's Serenade on itself, or a final crossing of some line boundary directly opens the grid search area. So a few really interesting finds there with our intersecting points. He also said, in Joy's Serenade, you can take your own path / an X leads the way. Had an odd lack of either punctuation or capitalization of an. Since the rest of the poem is properly formatted, there's a potential clue here. So again, we're talking about an X leads the way. Could the word be annex? Like a park annex, or part of a country or state that was historically annexed. Locations beginning with X, EX, such as Ekstrom Lake, Wisconsin. Also, locations with 10, a Roman numeral X, in either their name, like 10 Lakes Trail in Yosemite. Another possibility is an X from the book, for example, X-rated, chapter 21, about SEX, page 183, which could read as Southeast X. So anyways, these were just Chet's thoughts. I thought they were very thought-provoking and creative and just challenged you to think in a slightly different way, kind of building on what can we do with this theme.
Yeah, I really like a lot of those. I like the last one too, the SEX, because of the mystery of the sales, SALES. That's kind of in the same format that has been catching people's eye. I don't know. I go off tangent here, but I still like the idea of the eclipses where those have intersected in the past. But any intersection ideas? I like that he pulled those terms out of the book and gave more examples of those, even though it's maybe falling into the trap that Cody says that we have to find the clues in a whole book and you might get the confirmers no matter what. Even though we don't with butterfly.
Yeah. And I mean, we don't necessarily have to dissect this too deep. I just think his thought process I thought was valuable to share with the audience, because I can imagine everybody else similar to me enjoys getting some fresh perspective to try to think in a different way to hopefully prompt something new.
100%.
Yeah. I'm very on board with the idea of some sort of intersection clue in general, whether that be eclipse intersection or anything intersection. I think it's also just a very natural way of pinpointing a physical location for a treasure, for it to be at some sort of intersection. So very on board with that. I agree that I like that he pulled out all of those examples from the text just to kind of shine a light on how frequently that kind of terminology is used. And the one thing I'm sure I've said this a handful of times before, but I just keep coming back to anything where you're trying to read into punctuation or capitalization or anything. I just feel like I'm not comfortable enough with book editing and fixes after the initial publication to like invest too much time into like, oh, it's missing this one piece of punctuation or capitalization. So, but I do like the idea.
Yeah, I think Chet pointing out N and X leads the way is actually shining a good light on that, because one, X is explicitly in Joy's Serenade as a major point, and that it is an X is interesting actually now that he points that out, because it could very easily be X leads the way, like in the poetic format that Joy's Serenade is in. It'd be really easy to omit "an" out of that. I feel just reading it, but.
And another counterpoint to my original point, I'd like to think that something that I think we can all agree is probably pretty important, like, and in a poem format would get kind of more heavily scrutinized than just some other typos in more of kind of, I guess, generic prose, for lack of a better term.
Counterpoint to your counterpoint. Here was spelled incorrectly in Forrest Fenn poem, so
checkmate.
I win. Solved. Cool. That's good food for thought. I would like to review that email one more time, so I will dig into the mailbag and look at it. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Discord detectives. Just as a sneak peek, we might. I went through the soundboard and fixed the Blake rant, because I think I have a Blake rant today. So everybody get ready. All right. First one is definitely not a Blake rant. It's my YouTube crush, Matthew Hobbies. So Matthew Hobbies published his first chapter 1 review. So everybody check that out. Obviously, we'll have a link down below. Just a few highlights. Obviously, I want you to view that content, and I'm not going to cover everything, but a couple of nuggets from the Matthew Hobbies review of Chapter 1. He focuses a lot on the concept of making a map, or a roadmap, which obviously we've discussed ad nauseum the past few months. So that's good. Fun fact 1. Apple was actually founded by 3 people. So obviously in the chapter, Jon Collins-Black focuses on the Steve Wozniak, Steve Jobs as being the founders of Apple, but there was actually a third partner, which I did not know about, Ronald Wayne, and that was not mentioned in the chapter, which we had just the previous episode talked about. That Charles Loma had 2 apprentices over his career, and only one was mentioned in the book, right? So is this another instance of clue by omission, or is that just so that the text doesn't get too muddled by details? I don't know. But Ronald Wayne was a third founder of Apple. He left the company after like 12 days or something ridiculous, so it's pretty easy to omit that. He was, I think Matthew Hobbies said he was bought out for $800 for 10% of the company.
Can you imagine? Oh, oof, oof. His name wasn't Steve.
Yeah. He highlights the text. Think of these pages as a map, a place to start, directions to follow, and a destination where to arrive. As you encounter stories or ideas that you feel you can divine from, write them down, draw them out, and organize them. So that was text that Matthew Hobbies highlighted, certainly as important for his chapter 1 review. He talks a little bit about the page rips, or actually the image borders. So particularly for the Scotty image, he has some theories about where those rips could have been designed. Talks about Canva a bit, but doesn't think it was a Canva. He thinks it was a Photoshop where you can create a template for torn paper effects, and he has some examples that he discusses. So definitely check that out, Bryn.
So he's saying that he thinks it's just stylistic. It's not.
No, he argues both ways. So that's why I like him, right? Because he's indecisive like us sometimes. That he keeps all perspectives in mind. He doesn't choose one all the time. So he gives both arguments for that. He talks a little bit about the red herring image and has some good perspective on that I'd recommend checking out. One thing he mentioned that I hadn't noticed, and he doesn't give a clear example of it in this chapter, but when talking about the red herring image, he does state that he thinks there are sections in the book that have text that is irregularly spaced that might be a hint towards using light behind a book for this sort of reason. So he didn't give it a specific example of that necessarily, but I guess I had not picked up on that, nor had I seen examples of that yet, so I'll be interested to hear more about that from Matthew Hobbies.
Interesting. Did he say like kerning or line spacing?
Didn't use, I think he mentioned line spacing, but it wasn't clear to me whether it's like justified text or anything like that, because whenever I've gone through the book, it seems like it's very uniformly laid out, in my opinion. But so anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing if he is able to provide an example of that. He has a little section about how the map on the cover, there's like a stock image map, and I think on my cover I don't see it. I think maybe it's the book jacket. Anyway, there's a little interesting tidbit about how that could potentially line up to the Appalachian Trail box north compass if you line it north. I didn't quite follow the details of that, so that's worth another look. And then my favorite is the genreisms. So this is the term that Matthew Hobbies has coined for weird text that is written by Jon Collins-Black in the book. And he actually doesn't really have examples of genreisms, a true genreism in chapter 1. If you watch the video, which again I highly recommend, he starts with the closest thing he found, which is in chapter 1. Let's rewind to the summer of 1975. Life in America was certainly simpler than today. Home phones were rotary and screwed into kitchen walls. Milkmen still left morning deliveries of bottles at people's front doors. Instead of smartphones, people enjoyed reading comics in their daily newspapers while having morning coffee. So he claims that that's not a true genreism by his definition, but the closest thing to it in chapter 1 is like where John is injecting certain terms and certain concepts into the text in awkward's probably the wrong term, but like creative ways, I would say. Lastly here, he goes back to one of his original concepts, which is when Jon Collins-Black gives information on how to open the puzzle boxes. Does that relate to the number of steps or number of clues that you need to find within chapters. And so because the lion's share box has 7 actions to open that box, one of his theories is that you need 7 actions from the text in order to put you on the right roadmap or the right path. And so he thinks 2 of those are potentially in chapter 1. 1 is create a roadmap. 2 is readying ourselves as much as possible to put our planning into action. So he points those out. And he is also highly skeptical of that, but just putting it out there as an idea. And then, finally, something to look forward to. He's going to be building 2 timelines while he goes through the chapters. One is the personal timeline of Jon Collins-Black. So every time Jon Collins-Black mentions a personal event, he's going to try to put that in a timeline. And then also do a historical timeline, which I think is going to be very challenging. But he's going to make an attempt at that. So,
why do you think that's going to be challenging?
I think there's a lot of historical events in the book.
I think the quantity.
I think quantity and timescale is going to be difficult when he goes into ancient Greece and things like that.
His PowerPoint formatting will be tested to its highest abilities.
Yes, absolutely. So check out Matthew Hobbies. We'll have the link below. He's going to be posting 1 chapter a month on the 12th of the month. And then if he has too much content for a single episode, he's going to post a second episode on the 21st. And those align to the dates of the release of the book, which was originally supposed to be, I think, October 21st, and then ended up coming out November 12th. So he has reasons for this.
That's clever. I like it.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds very well structured. So I'm excited. I'm excited to follow along with the series.
All right. Quick other Discord detectives. There's been some discussion. And looking back into the historical Discord, this was all from Calazar's, so I haven't checked out the other Discord. Mysterious Writings for hints of this. It was actually mentioned first that I could find by Dirt McGirt in December 27th, 2024. And this is about the past and future box. If you read the first paragraph of the chapter, it's describing looking out his office window, and Excel is in Microsoft Office. Window is a window on a computer screen. Other people said, anonymous here, just last month, looked out the window, Outlook, another Microsoft product. Also, Office, Windows, Surface, also Microsoft products.
Oh, wow.
And a few of those are genreisms or close to genreisms. Like, didn't have to be in the text.
Right.
Sorry, I don't know if you're done.
Well, go ahead, because I like this Microsoft connection.
I was gonna say that I'm already sold on like this. This is the theme. I'm in.
And then actually, there was talk before that. So November of last year, right when the book came out. This is the only thing. This is from VBHT. This is the only thing I found related to tallying traffic in the past. Bill Gates and Paul Allen developed Traf-O-Data in Seattle, Washington in the early 1970s. Traf-O-Data was a precursor to Microsoft and was designed to process and analyze traffic data from roadway counters. Gates and Allen aimed to help local governments automate the processing of traffic tapes, making it easier to plan road improvements. So that's the connection to counting cars. Oh, where's my sound effect?
Vehicles.
Kind of sit in the front yard and just count the cars.
The project was not a major commercial success, but it provided valuable experience that contributed to their later success with Microsoft. And then Beeve also mentioned that just a couple days ago in the Discord. So before Microsoft, Gates had a company called Traf-O-Data that was not successful. And then he had a new little shift of the word search, which I'm going to pull up here.
Am I being converted to past and future boxes? What if it's in Washington with our Microsoft
That was my thought,
connections?
yeah.
So yeah, there's hints that it's Washington. So this is what Beeve did just a couple days ago. So he said, if you shift the 12 line 12, so there's a line obviously in the word search that spells out 12, right? If you shift it 12 spaces and you shift the 5 line 5 spaces, you get D&D state. So Dungeons and Dragons state. So anybody know who owns Dungeons and Dragons right now?
Is it
So it's
is it Ravensburger?
No, it's Hasbro, but
And they're
a
don't they have
subsidiary.
an office in Seattle?
Yes, Wizards of the Coast is in Renton.
Wizards of the Coast. Yep.
So it's a bit of a stretch, I think, to shift the word search that much, but because you're shifting at 12 on the line that says 12 and 5 on the line that says 5, it's kind of interesting.
Well, and that you get Dungeons and Dragons. I mean,
Right.
he mentions Dungeons and Dragons in the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And state. I mean, we have state also in the word. Like, I don't think that's crazy.
Anyway, I thought it was kind of interesting. So then,
I am sucked. I'm intrigued.
Okay, Cody, opinions?
If we take like the idea of not trying to get too far into the weeds and just like taking things on face value, which is sounds like one of the themes of this episode, is that that's something we're trying to do.
Yes.
This jumps out to me as like clear and concise.
Yes. No, truly though, it's like it's so easy to get wild with this, but if you just simply do those shifts, it's like, can you apply that at a face value to some other things and just kind of manipulate the word search in that way, not get so many layers deep, you know?
Yeah, like reset it and then shift things, the horizontal lines, then shift the vertical lines, maybe shift the diagonal lines if there was any diagonal numbers, but reset it after each one of those versus compounding them a bunch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely be playing around with that a little bit.
Nice.
Ooh, and what if it is in Washington?
That would be excellent.
That would be very exciting.
'cause
That's
you
so much
being-
easier than flying across the country.
You being into Pokemon box, we're going to put a lot of air miles when we start going boots on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm gonna do a tentative Blake rant now. It's on a slightly different topic.
You're still sharing your
Oh,
screen.
yeah. Let me turn it
Also,
off.
drop the sound drop.
I will as soon as I can put context to it. All right. So, because I was browsing the past and future box, something that's always grinded my gears, as they say, and I think I'm correct on this. I could be mistaken, so I'll work with the listeners if they can prove me wrong. But it's about the Welcome to Word Search title for the word search, and this one user says the title is an homage to Ready Player One, Welcome to Oasis. So there's this, I think it's this rumor going around that when you log into the Oasis in Ready Player One, it says Welcome to Oasis. And I don't think that's true. And I see it quite often, actually. So here's my rant. Blake rant, Blake rant, Blake rant, Blake rant, Blake rant, Blake rant. So
Yeah.
I've been waiting so long.
That was from Rashawn. Thank you, Rashawn.
Thank you,
for that
Rashawn.
sound drop. That was broken for a long time, and I finally fixed it. So now I have a reason to do a rant. So I don't think anywhere it says "Welcome to Oasis." I know I had a copy, an ebook version that I don't have anymore, that I searched for that term and never was able to find it. Which is why we were more excited about Welcome to Zork, right? Because that is in the Zork game. Welcome to Zork. Welcome to Word Search. That was, one large connection there. I don't think anywhere it says Welcome to Oasis in the book. When you turn on the Oasis, it says Ready Player One, not Welcome to Oasis. Parsival backs me up. Parsival, one of my favorites on the Discord. He says, actually in the book it's written as Welcome to the Oasis, not Welcome to Oasis. And I think it says Ready Player One when you boot up Oasis. So anyway, that's my rant for the day. Stop saying welcome to Oasis. I don't think that's true.
I wonder if it kind of got lost in translation of someone switched it from welcome to Zork to welcome to Oasis, and it just took off.
Yes, I think it's a rumor. But caveat that says I need the listeners' help because I don't have access to my ebook version anymore, so I can't search and double check that. But I bought multiple copies of Ready Player One over my lifetime. But I don't have an ebook version right now. So, anywho, rant over. Shall we do
Nice.
coincidence of the day? All right, coincidence of the day. As we were doing some nice garage sailing a couple weeks ago, I looked through the postcards as I usually do to try to find postcards that I like, and I came across this one. Indian symbols and their meaning. And sure enough, there is a butterfly. So let's keep on the lookout for this symbol, which means everlasting life. I was hoping it would say joy there, but it didn't, alas.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought this was a cool little thing.
Interesting.
I don't know how accurate it is, since it's kind of old school. Looks like from a older time for sure. But I thought it was interesting just because there was a butterfly on there, so that's why it's a coincidence.
I like it. Nice find.
Thank you. Short and sweet for coincidence of the day today because we're running a bit long. All right. Anything else? Any parting thoughts? I thought that was a cool episode and turned out to have a lot of connections in between segments, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm all in a fluster about Past and Future Box now.
No, it's because you've been disconnected from it for too long that seems exciting. But I don't know. I would temper your expectations a little bit, in my opinion.
Okay. Good words of wisdom.
But it would be sweet if it's in Washington. All right. I think that's an episode. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Searching for clues